This is going to be the least I've ever let anybody down.
Well, friends, we're here to talk Doctor Who, the Christmas special of 2024, the one otherwise entitled Joy to the World. Now, spoilers do lie ahead. If those aren't for you, take heed. This is your last warning. Otherwise, let's crack into the episode. Well, I apologize for my lateness here. I wasn't actually planning to talk about this episode, but then I decided, you know what? The internet needs more middle-of-the-road wind grace because, frankly, I thought this episode was okay. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was the greatest thing on earth. Now, a little bit about my backstory with Doctor Who Christmas specials. For the most part, I never feel like any of them are all that exceptional. Sure, there are a couple of standouts and ones that actually, feel like you need to watch them or revisit them during the Christmas season. But for the most part, I don't think any of them are really ever the height of what Doctor Who can be. There's definitely a lot of feelings they cram into these things, and this one is no exception, but we'll get to that in a little bit. The first thing I want to talk about is the Time Hotel, which was kind of bandied about as the main focal point of what this episode was going to be revolving around with all the pre-material stuff that we got out there. I feel like it was a lot of a dropped opportunity, and it was kind of underutilized. Now, a lot of things in this episode did potentially feel like they were using the Time Hotel concept more as a backdrop to set up a possible future spin-off series somewhere down the line. I know they talked about early on there's going to be several spin-offs or kind of side stories going on aside from the main Doctor Who, and I'm wondering if they're planning to utilize the Time Hotel in that sort of concept, or if they just didn't have enough time in a 50-whatever minute episode here to really truly utilize it. And that's something I thought was prominent throughout this episode. A lot of interesting concepts that were pretty threadbare when you really look at them. They used the London Blitz, the Orient Express, and Mount Everest as the three different time periods the Doctor traveled to a couple different times in this episode to show what the Time Hotel could do. There were a couple other ones thrown in later on. I have nothing against those time periods. They're just kind of things we've seen before. None of them were too out there, outlandish, that special feeling. None of them really punched you right in the face with, wow, this is a great use of the Time Hotel. They were all kind of obvious choices, maybe with the exception of Mount Everest. But that leads me to wonder if they didn't want to blow all of their choices for a future spinoff right here. The Time Hotel did offer a couple of other things that I really liked, specifically the staff. The Silurian guy, Melnak, I believe was his name, had about 4 minutes of screen time, and it was a nice tragic backstory. Would have loved to explore more with him in the future. The same with Trev. I liked his character. We got a little bit more with him, maybe 6 minutes of story time. Again, they were all linked to the main storyline, but it was very, very threadbare, I guess is the way I'm thinking of it. It wasn't explored very much at all, and not as much as I would have liked. I just want to spend more time with these guys. And the third person I'll get to in a moment, but I also like the Time Hotel concept of
the kitchens are 30 minutes in the future. They start preparing your food before you order it. It saves time.
The other character I truly loved in this, and another reason that it felt like we didn't spend as much in the Time Hotel as I would have preferred, is the whole sudden middle of the story exploration of the Doctor and Anita having to actually live an entire year in normal time in order for the Doctor to be able to get back and fulfill the bootstrap paradox of getting the code. Kind of loved and hated the throwaway line about the bootstrap paradox.
Bootstrapping is weird, I know. I mean, basically the code came from nowhere, but then so did the universe and no one complains about that.
The fact that I loved the Time Hotel staff and I absolutely adored the side story with Anita kind of underlines the fact that Joy, being the de facto companion of the story, was probably the least interesting part. She was my least interesting character in this whole episode, in the main ones. There was a couple of side staff and stuff I didn't really care about. The person on the Orient Express, the British couple at the beginning and the end, they didn't really have that much of an impact on the overall story itself. But Joy was supposed to be the main companion, and we spent very little time with actual Joy, and this is where the emotional punch of the episode came. It absolutely hit. That whole exploration of her mother dying during COVID and all of that stuff, it really worked. But I think it could have worked better had we actually been given time with this character. We spent very little time with Joy as a character overall, and half of that time, or maybe even more than half of the time we spent with her, she was possessed by the Starseed, so we didn't really have a clear indication of who she was. But if you don't want to be forgotten, why not join these folks and become a member of the channel?
Join when, please hit subscribe. Live long, share your vibe. Comment down below and see new galactic
couple of things in this episode that really felt like they were bludgeoning you. There was a few things in this episode that did feel like they were bludgeoning you over the head. There's something that happens in episodes like this, or stories in general, where they drop a line or they say something that really makes you feel like that is where the entire idea came from. So for instance, there's a crossover comic between Star Trek the original series and the X-Men, where Beast, who is Dr. Hank McCoy, meets Dr. Leonard McCoy from the Enterprise, and somebody says Dr. McCoy and they both say what? In my personal opinion, that specific line there feels like something someone came up with and then developed the rest of the story around that. Here it feels like where the doctor says this,
No wonder there was no room at the inn.
they thought backwards from that idea and they came up with a time hotel concept and all of this stuff around that. The fact that the episode ends in Bethlehem and Joy is the actual literal Christmas star, all of that stuff. It felt like it was all working backwards from a single idea. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of ideas kind of sprout that way. It just felt to me a little too obviously placed in the episode that that's where this idea came from. Maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe it was just a clever line they came up with after the whole thing was done and they're like, wait a minute, hotels, inns, Christmas, cool to see that they're running with the Mavity thing still. I thought they were going to drop that pretty early on, so the fact that they're sticking with it, I guess kudos on them. The dinosaur outpost, obviously it made sense with the storyline they were trying to tell, going backwards in time to plant the starseed and inevitably burn up the whole Earth. That felt a little bit Douglas Adams-y to me, who I know wrote for Doctor Who, so I guess technically they're really the same universe. But it very much felt like the Vogon destruction of the Earth, the way that Villengard was just like, whatever, who cares? Anyone who gets burnt up in the process, oh well, sorry. Sucks to be you. But yeah, going back to the dinosaur outpost just felt a little bit, again, undercooked. How did that place get there? How do these doors exist? Did somebody have to physically travel back in time to create that ahead of time? Did they just find a random door that they utilized? Did they just use some sort of hole in a cave and that counts? These are the things I want explored. That's partially why I feel like the time hotel concept was just wasted in this episode as more of a backdrop than an actual utilization of a cool idea. And that's why I hope we do get, going forth, some sort of time hotel spinoff, or at least a follow-up in another story. Not that we get that many episodes in a season anymore, so not sure how that'll work. But the staff I would love to see actually explored, technically most of them died by the end of this episode. Trev and Melnak are both part of the holographic Villengard mainframe or whatever. Now, I have thoughts. If this is a show set outside of the main Doctor Who and the Doctor doesn't interact with them, we could have all the time hotel adventures we want prior to this event, or they could always bring them back in holographic form. Say the Doctor was able to rescue them from the mainframe or whatever, even though they had that nice send-off of all ascending into the sky to become the Night Star. Whatever. There are ways to bring them back. But the whole post-credit scene, which wasn't an actual post-credit scene, where they come and recruit Anita to work in the time hotel, it just felt like they're sowing so many seeds here for things that need to occur outside of this episode. And that's really the main thing I wanted to talk about, because in and of itself, this episode was fine. I wasn't overly impressed with a lot of the graphics and the CGI and stuff. Some of them looked a little ropey. This is Doctor Who. I don't care if everything looks like crap. It still has a charm to it. But the way that they tout the new Disney money and the new technology and the AR wall, I still feel like it all looks kind of chintzy at the end of the day. Even though the story wasn't fantastic, it had all the elements to make a really good story, and it had a lot of the emotional punches which really make it stand out, and it makes you feel something at the end of the day. And that's something I think you need in a Christmas special to make it truly great. You need to have those emotions. This isn't going to be one I want to sit back and watch year after year after year, but it definitely held my attention for the hour it was on. I liked most of the characters. I liked the potential setup and implications for the future going forth for a spin-off, or just further exploration in the universe, and I liked the emotional beats, even though I don't feel like they were necessarily always woven into the episode in the most complex manner. It more felt like story beat, story beat, story beat, emotional punch, another emotional punch. Let's throw 2 or 3 more emotional punches in there at the end, and then while everybody's crying, throw the ropey effects of the CG star ascending into the sky and hammer us over the head that we are in Bethlehem, and this is the reason for Christmas, and there's the wise men about to go on their journey. Those are just my rambly thoughts I thought I should throw out there. Probably going to get hate from both sides for the people that thought it was amazing and the people that utterly hated it because Doctor Who died several years ago and this isn't Doctor Who. Whatever you think, leave all that down below. Like, share, subscribe to all those YouTube things. Join. But until next time...
I have exceeded my personal expectations, which is giving me considerable satisfaction and renewed hope for the future. However, I'm dead.